characters in the Zelda universe are part of what makes the series so special. Just like real life, the games have their share of adorable, cool, funny, annoying, and downright insane people. Today, I'll be talking about my top 10 characters in The Legend of Zelda. The only rule I have for this list is that each character can be used just once. If I didn't have this rule in place, then this would basically just be a top 10 list of the coolest versions of Link, because I've always thought he was a pretty cool guy, and I genuinely wanted to be like him when I was younger. I have to say, being the silent kid at school really got me places. I am 10 minutes away from New Year's Day happening. I got all 4 versions of Animal Crossing that I own. Occasionally not wearing pants also got me some places. Link's Awakening is my favorite 2D Zelda game. The best character on Koholint Island, in my opinion, is Marin. At first, she seems like just another nice character, but after completing the Key Cavern, Link has a conversation with Marin that shows a more contemplative side of her. She wonders what lies beyond Koholint Island, and if she'll ever get to see it in person. Then, she goes around and harasses everyone on Koholint Island. Maybe the reason she wants to leave this place is because she wishes to escape the delusional people on the island. Or maybe it's because she's an actual felon. Either way, Marin manages to be normal enough to not be mentally insane, but also interesting enough to put her in 10th place on this list. Just as a little forewarning, I don't have a great way to capture footage off the 3DS, but this next character comes from A Link Between Worlds. And that character is, of course, Ravio. This guy decided to make his home in Link's home while Link was out adventuring. Don't worry, he reassures Link that he'll barely notice him. So I left my house again, and he turned it into a store. Now, he expects me to rent items from him. If I die, then he'll have them collected and returned to his shop. Obviously all that stuff stinks for Link, but the thing I like about Ravio is that he teaches us a valuable lesson. Dead people essentially function like lost and founds, because you got a bunch of possessions that aren't yours up for grabs, and it's not like they can do anything about it. Link's grandma in the Wind Waker is awesome. She took care of 2 children by herself. She makes delicious soup. The game explicitly calls her kind. Those are some good characterization techniques. Unfortunately, Link's grandma is not exempt from the struggles of the real world. The Helmrock King steals her granddaughter. Her grandson goes on a quest to save his sister. Link's grandma becomes depressed because, well, I don't think I have to spell it out for you. That's code for, I don't feel like writing anything else for this segment. The next character comes from Majora'sMask, which I only have the 3DS version of. Romani perfectly represents the depressing themes of Majora'sMask. When you first meet her, she seems like a rather carefree girl. Her only concern is that aliens are going to abduct cows from her ranch. For whatever reason, she's really concerned about losing a few cows. I would be more scared of, I don't know, the moon that's gonna come crashing down and killing everything in a couple days. If you come back to the ranch on the second night, you'll find that the aliens are actually quite a threat. Not only do they steal the cows, but they also take Romani. Somehow, they figure out that Romani isn't a cow and throw her back to Termina. Either she took a lot of brain damage after that fall, or they did some seriously messed up stuff that changed the way her mind worked. She sits on a crate and violently shakes her head, seemingly unaware of her surroundings. Her sister, Cremia, is disappointed in herself for not listening to Romani's warnings, as she should be. If the aliens had been stopped, then the ranch would still have its cows. I would put Tetra on this list, but that would technically break the rule that I created at the beginning of the video, so I'll find another pirate to take her place. There's this Professor Egad looking guy, but he had a detailed description of Gonzo and Tetra getting married someday that I'm sure he didn't make up on the fly, and it looks like the age gap between these two is at least the age of Tetra, so I'm gonna have to say no. Gonzo didn't oppose the idea of the marriage. As a matter of fact, he actually seemed quite happy with it, so I'm not going to be putting him at 6th either. This pirate looks like he hasn't left his parents' basement in 5 years. Then there's Nico. He's the pirate's new recruit. I actually like this guy because he thinks he's some big shot when Link shows up. Nico sets up challenges that took him months to complete, and Link does them in about 2 minutes. Or 20. Depends on how good you are. After completing the challenges, Nico will stand in a small room with a treasure chest and let you take its contents. Then you can leave him there. There's probably a switch that can open the gate somewhere in that room. You can't have a top 10 Zelda characters list and not include Zelda, unless you don't like her. But I actually do like her from Skyward Sword. Skyward Sword has some of the best characters in the franchise, so don't be too surprised if you end up seeing it more often at the end of this video. It's also one of the longest games to slog through, but it's worth it for moments like this. Hours and hours of gameplay for 10 seconds worth of footage. So worth it. Skyward Sword's version of Zelda has a strong relationship with Link, and always stands up for him. Then, when the roles are reversed, Link tries his hardest to save her, which isn't saying much, or at least the characters like to act as though Link isn't doing very well, but I think that fighting a massive Stalfos wielding 2 swords is pretty impressive. And if Impa's gonna complain about Link being late all the time, then maybe the developers shouldn't be splitting a key into 5 pieces to add 5 extra hours of padding to the game. But the fact that Link is willing to go through those 5 hours of padding is proof that Zelda means a lot to him. His quest isn't to save the world or even a potential girlfriend, it's to save a childhood friend. Another thing I like about Zelda is her dad. Headmaster Gaepora's eyes are frightening. Imagine waking up in the middle of the night and seeing this standing over you in your room. Link doesn't have to imagine it because that was an actual thing that happened in the game. Girahim has the best personality of any villain in the Zelda universe. This dude has definitely been in the theater business for a few too many years. The way he walks around the boss room is just full of the exaggerated swagger of a psychopath. Girahim has no respect for personal boundaries, which is sure to make you uncomfortable. The monologues he gives throughout the game match his creepy nature. These things may sound negative, but they do a very good job of making you want to kill Girahim. Okay, that also sounds pretty bad, but Girahim is a villain, so this is one of those cases where murder is acceptable. Over the course of the game, Girahim's appearance changes. Each time, it looks like his skin is flaking away to reveal his true self, which isn't actually a person at all, but rather, the spirit of Demise's sword, much in the same way that Fi is the spirit in the Master Sword. Girahim's skin flaking away could be metaphorical for his insanity slowly dissipating over the course of the game. Up next, we have the main protagonist of the series, Link. But which one? Should I talk about Toon Link and his overly expressive personality? Or maybe the blue Link from Triforce Heroes because I like the color blue? Perhaps the hero of Skies because he's lazy? After much thought and debate that I just did in the last 10 seconds, I decided to go with the hero of Twilight because he's the absolute coolest of them all. This unit of a man heroically saved the children of Kakariko Village in a jousting match to the death with a giant goblin thing. Learning about that whole sequence of events is actually the reason I really wanted to play Twilight Princess. But of course, it was rated T, and me as a 15-year-old was not mature enough for it. That was a little bit of an over-exaggeration. I think I was like 14. Either way, that was the first time that I ever got to play this game. I had this expectation that Twilight Princess was going to be a really epic, bloody game. It turns out it wasn't bloody at all, but the way that Link was characterized made the whole game feel incredibly epic. If the jousting match on the Bridge of Eldin that I talked about before doesn't have you convinced, then maybe the colossal beast that this version of Link fights will. The thing I like so much about the Twilight Princess version of Link is that he does all this stuff without hesitation. Maybe he's just incredibly dumb, but there's a part of me that wants to believe this guy is simply courageous and knows that he'll survive everything while looking cool. Also, yes, all of this footage was recycled from my Twilight Princess video. Awesome edit. Groose is one of the funniest characters in The Legend of Zelda. I wouldn't say he had me on the floor laughing, it was more like he put an ever so slight smirk on my face, which is probably the way that the majority of you respond to my jokes. Just a smirk of pity. I'll take it. Groose starts out as your typical high school jerk, making fun of Link and trying his very best to impress Zelda. When Zelda falls out of the sky, Groose becomes more depressed than Link's grandma after losing her grandchildren. About midway through the game, he recovers from his time of mourning and joins Link on one of the protagonist's trips back to the surface of Hyrule. Not only is it one of the funniest scenes in Zelda, it's also the start of something very rare in a Zelda game, which is a person's character development. He thinks it's his time to march in and save Princess Zelda, but he soon learns that's not his role. Instead, he helps out Link in what many would consider to be the most annoying fight in the game. The few who don't think that have a thing for toes, or have a serious mental disorder. Probably both. Before we get to number 1, I'm sure some people are going to be mad if I don't mention a few characters, so here's some honorable mentions. Midna, Error, and somebody from Breath of the Wild. How about Roscoe, the Ancient Orb? The best character in the Legend of Zelda series is Lineback. Say what you will about the Phantom Hourglass, but Lineback is the absolute best part. I do have some amount of bias towards the game considering I played it a lot when I was younger, and the Temple of Fire is the first dungeon I remember beating in any Zelda game. It took me hours to beat back then, but this time around it only took me about 12 minutes 29 seconds to complete. Not that I was timing it to give myself a little bit of self-confidence simply for being able to beat the dungeon faster than my 7-year-old self, because that would be pathetic. I'm just estimating that it probably took me about 12 minutes 29 seconds to beat the dungeon. Anyways, Lineback is great. From the very first time you meet him, you know he's going to be an over-the-top butthole. He claims to be incapable of leaving the Temple of the Ocean King because he sprained his ankle. Apparently being surrounded by spikes wasn't enough of an excuse for him. After Link lowers the spikes, Lineback runs on his sprained ankles because he's a real man who doesn't feel pain. He's also a real man who hides in a crate every time a woman boards his ship. The woman in question is Jolene, a person who has quite a history with Lineback. A little thing I like about Lineback is the completely unnecessary animations he has. Like in this scene where he rolls across a ship for a split second. Anytime he's on screen, he finds a way to unintentionally lighten the mood. As for character development, he actually does have some, but most of it takes place at the end of the game. When Link gets caught by the main villain, Bellum, and all hope seems lost, Lineback picks up Link's sword and stabs it through one of Bellum's eyes. Lineback is not at all a hero, and he most certainly doesn't want to be, which makes this moment of bravery way more unexpected and awesome. He pretty much sacrifices himself to let Link save Tetra from Bellum. With all that said, I don't think there's any question that Lineback is the best character in The Legend of Zelda. Remember when I talked about Roscoe the Ancient Orb earlier? Well, he actually has quite a traumatic backstory, so if you'd like to hear more about that, then please subscribe. I might do a video about it later. Bye.